Hello, alright, this is going to be a tutorial on how to remove track dots. It's a kind of another way I came up with that I was kind of forced to come up with when I did my wolverine claws, because you know, the usual way I could not do because of the way my hand went back and forth like this. You know, it would go back and forth quite a bit, and you know, it really wouldn't work for stuff like that because you can see that when they go back, your dots get smaller, and then when you come forward, they get bigger. So in the 2D tracking, when you're taking a piece of skin from this area and cloning it over here, copying it over here basically, if anybody's familiar with VFXWorlds Terminator Eye tutorial track dot remove, um, it just, you know, it works good for the basic movements up, down, left, and right. But once you go back, you have to you have to manually position the dot. You know, you got to set keyframes. You have to do everything to get the dot, you know, like you normally would. But you also have to adjust it over time quite a bit as you go back and forth. And it was kind of, you know, it was a little too tedious. So I didn't, you know, I kind of had to go a different way. And this idea seems to work pretty good. I can't guarantee it's going to work for everybody on every kind of a track dot, but it does seem to work for anything that I've came up with, trying to get rid of a track dot. So also probably be good for getting rid of pimples too in videos. So you know, if you want to do that. But let's go ahead and show you how I'm going to do this. I'm going to start off with my hand footage. Okay, before you load anything, just make sure your footage, you know, you go to interpret footage and make sure everything's set up, frame rate, put a check for preserve edges to make sure you get best quality. Make sure your aspect ratio is good, separate your fields if you have field footage. Just make sure all that's correct. Make sure your project is set for 16-bit, either double click on it or hit the Alt key on the keyboard and just click, and you'll get it from 8-bit to 16-bit, just to get full quality and colors and all that in there. You just want to make sure everything's set up good, especially for tracking data and all that. For this footage, this is just going to be a 2D track. So I'm just going to go ahead and track right in After Effects just to show you what I'm going to do, how to do everything. If you did like a Terminator Eye tutorial and you had your 3D data from Synthesize, you can export the 2D data from that and use that to for each track dot. But basically, you need tracking data for each one of these dots. Okay, so you can either come in After Effects and do it, or if you already did 3D tracking, go ahead and in Synthesize, just go ahead and get the tracking data from there for each 2D dot and bring it in here so you can use it for a solid that we're going to create. I'm going to go ahead and create a solid now. I'm just going to make it comp size and make sure it's white. Click OK, and that's one thing. I'm going to duplicate my footage also down here just to have two copies of it. Turn off that. Now also what I want to do is, I already tracked this data, so on this bottom comp here, I'm just going to go bottom. Alright, so I already tracked this just to save time on the tutorial. So basically just do your tracking, just standard tracking, just track motion. If you have field footage, make sure you go in your options and check track fields, and just get all that set up. And once you track it, just go ahead and apply it to the solid. So I'm going to go to Edit Target, make sure it's set for the solid, click OK, and apply. X and Y, click OK. Okay, now it's applied to that one dot. Alright, now I'm going to go on the solid, hit T, and to bring up opacity, and just going to bring it down just a little bit, maybe 20%. And then I'm going to zoom in while I'm on the solid, and I'm going to go get the ellipse tool. I'm going to make a circle bigger than the dot, just a little bit bigger. And I'm just going to go ahead and manually move this just to make sure that, you know, it's center, using the anchor point of the mask to just make sure it's center on that dot. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you know, I like to make sure it's perfect. Alright, so that's one thing. Now, this let me bring my transparency back up. You can turn your transparency back up now. Now this is fine if you're doing it this way. You don't really need to change anything in here. You don't have to do any extra steps, but I'm just going to show you how to do it this way first, and then I'll show you another way that we can work with the alpha mat here. We're just going to leave it set up like this, and now what we're going to do is turn it off, the solid off. I'm going to go to our second hand footage, our second copy, and we're going to set it to alpha mat. Alright, now if we turn off the bottom layer, you'll see it cuts everything away except the circle area. You know, we have our track dot of our hand and everything in there. Alright, so that's one thing. Let's go ahead and turn back our footage. Let's zoom in on this just so we see what happens when we go ahead and do this. Now on the second copy, we're going to go ahead and second video copy, just second hand footage. We're going to go ahead and add a noise grain, dust and scratches, and we're going to set the radius to 12. It may be more or less depending on if it's high def or not, but you can adjust it. Basically, you just want to get rid of your dot. You want to set it until you don't see your dot anymore. I find 12 work pretty good. You can go to anything. Just get it to get rid of your dot. You know, 5 actually works pretty good for this dot. But whatever, you know, 7, anything that works for your dot that gets rid of it, that's great. But just be aware that sometimes your dot will change over time because, you know, the scaling and all that stuff. So just make sure you make it, you know, you use a big enough radius to cover everything. And you know, you may want to skim through your footage a little bit just to double check, you know, it's a big enough radius to cover it. Okay, so once you get your radius set up correctly and get rid of that, you'll notice that it is smooth in this area now, right? And our original footage is kind of, you know, pixely. That's because of the natural grain of video. So all we have to do to fix that is we're going to go to noise grain, match grain, and then we're going to set it viewing mode to final output, and for the noise source layer we're going to set it to the bottom footage. Okay, so now if you notice it's got grain in it again. See, here's no, and there's the grain. Now we bring back the grain from the footage. Alright, so that's, you know, you can also go to tweaking if it doesn't look quite right and the grain's a little bit off. Just tweak your softness, size, and intensity, you know, to give it a little bit more grain, but this actually looks perfect. You know, the pixels and everything look just like the other pixels. Just play with these settings slightly, and that'll, you know, just until you get the blocks around here to look just like the rest of them. Don't worry about, you'll notice you'll be able to see the outer edge circle of your fixed dot. You're gonna see it just a little bit. Even if you zoom out a little bit, you may not see it on the cam program, but when you do it, you'll notice you'll see a little bit of a edge to it. But that's why, you know, we have our white solid now. So all we have to do is go to the white solid, and we can feather it. Just feather it out. Go to mask, open up the mask. You feather it, and you can change the expansion. I'm going to go right to 10. I'm going to feather it at 10, and then I'm going to change my expansion to 5. Okay, just play with the feathering and the expansion. Just expand it a little bit. See, and you'll get, you can see it's basically got a hard edge around the dot, and then it blends out like that. So I find that 5 and 10 work good for the 720 by 480 footage and the certain size dot that I had. So that setting might be perfect for you. But as you can see now, it's, you know, it's all feathered out now, and it, you know, our track dot's gone. See, before, after, and that's it. And the lighting,